So we are with the EMU Child and Family Specialty Clinics. I'm Genevieve and this is Elizabeth, and we're going to be presenting on how to help kids with big feelings today.
All right, so our general goals of this workshop are going to be learning about the importance of emotion coaching and then learning the specific steps of emotion coaching and how to become an emotion detective when communicating with your child.
So the general theme of this presentation is just that emotions are meant to be felt and expressed.
So we'll dive into the importance of emotion coaching a bit. So what is it? Emotion coaching is an approach for parents to help their children through big or moments of really big feelings and associated behaviors with those feelings. So that can be feeling, angry, sad, frustrated, any of those emotions that we might see behaviors with. But that also can mean, seeing or like working through happy feelings and positive feelings as well. So that's kind of the general like approach and idea of what emotion coaching is. And by walking through this process, it really promotes emotional intelligence in kids. So it teaches them how to be aware of their emotions, process that, and then develop emotional intelligence as they grow up if that communication is continued. So why is it important? So before we can kind of problem solve and think rationally, we really need to, help our children and even help ourselves kind of calm down, and allow our like thinking brain to start kind of taking over. So often when we're feeling these really big, emotions and kind of, really experiencing those big feelings, our thinking brain is not going to be the best or kind of the one that we're using in that moment, which I'm sure, if you're watching this, you've all experienced with your own kids or other kids as well. And we'll go into that a little bit more in one of our next slides about like a specific kind of hand motion that we can do to kind of exemplify that. Another reason why emotion coaching is important is that children are able to learn positive coping skills when they're able to identify and then regulate their own emotions with the help of their caregivers. And this general idea leads to a lot of positive outcomes for children, which we've seen through a lot of different research too, which we'll kind of reference throughout. But yeah, that's just our general kind of overview and conception of what emotion coaching is.
So as Elizabeth mentioned on the previous slide, when we're using emotion coaching, it's to help calm down the thinking brain so that we're able to react in a logical and not purely emotional way. So the way that we explain this is with Dan Siegel's hand model. So if you have your hand here, we think of the fingers as the thinking brain and the prefrontal cortex. The thumb we think of as the emotional brain or the limbic system, that's really the feeling center. And then the wrist is the brain stem. And so that's just the instinctive part of the brain. And so when kids are experiencing really big emotions, they do what we refer to as flipping their lid. So the thinking brain goes out of commission and everything is really being driven by the emotional center and the instinctive part of the brain. So before we're able to problem solve and think clearly, we need to be able to calm down and get our thinking brain back in control. And so that's what we use emotion coaching for.
So the next piece that we want to think about with emotion coaching is just our own, as caregivers, general, attitudes and responses regarding our emotions that we might have if these big feelings show up in our kids. So some ways that we can kind of think about that are different parenting styles. So, we can think about this in ways we've seen other people parent, how we parent, or maybe we were parented. And so these different kind of styles that we think of are, validating or emotion coaching. So when an emotion came up, for you or for someone else, that person said, it's okay to be sad. So kind of acknowledging and validating that feeling that we see. There can be dismissing styles of parenting, which can be like, oh, if a child's feeling sad, just cheer up, you're fine, we'll get over it. Something like that, kind of dismissing the emotion that we see. And then disapproving can also be a parenting style as well. So, again, if we're using the example of being sad, a caregiver might say, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. And then the last one that we think of is permissive or neglectful. So, again, going if the example is a child feeling sad, they might just ignore it, or you don't need to go if or just like if they're feeling sad or something, like, oh, we don't need to do that if you're too sad to do that. So kind of dismissing or just being neglectful of that feeling overall. So it can often be helpful when we're thinking about these different parenting styles and our own views on how we react to emotion to think about our own family of origin and how maybe we saw emotions in the house growing up. And that can be, with your own caregivers, with, just people that you were generally around. So, other trusted adults and how they interacted with their emotions and how that might be showing up for us as well.
So now we're going to walk you guys through the actual steps of emotion coaching and how to effectively help your child manage their big feelings.
Okay, so our 5 steps, we'll dive into these a little bit deeper. But our first one is just going to be being aware of a child's emotions, then recognizing big feelings as a chance to connect and practice some different skills, how to verbally label these emotions in our children, communicate empathy and understanding, and then finally set limits and problem solve if we're seeing behaviors.
So the first step is to be aware of your child's emotions. So noticing their body language, noticing their tone of voice. How would you feel in like a similar situation? Do they have any facial expression that might suggest what they're feeling? And remember that they might be feeling more than one thing at once, and being on the lookout for those lower intensity emotions of like disappointment or frustration before it becomes full blown like anger and a meltdown. And then also being aware of your own emotions in the situation. So if you need to take a break to calm down before trying to help your child regulate themselves, that's important to do that as well.
All right, for our second step, this is recognizing an emotions as a chance to connect and practice some different regulation skills. So, every instance of a child feeling a big feeling, whether it's anger, frustration, disappointment, sadness, like we've all been talking about, is a chance for children to experience being calmed by their caregiver or by another trusted adult and to help build stronger relationships. So it's in these times where they see how their caregiver or, family member reacts to their big feelings and their big emotions, and they're really watching them to, see how to react to those things and using that as a moment, as a chance to connect. And then they also get the opportunity during this time to help practice some skills that will learn how to self-regulate. So if they see, you taking a deep breath or kind of giving yourself some space from the situation that was making you frustrated, then they'll start to learn and observe some of those things as well, and use that, when they're feeling that big feeling. But it's not something, that is going to come all the time supernaturally. So by, using this as a chance of these big feelings as a point of connection, they're really going to start connecting those ideas and seeing it in you as well.
So the third step is to help the child verbally label the emotions. And so this is just to help give them that language so they're able to describe what it is that they're feeling. And so we want you to be labeling both positive and negative emotions, saying things like, oh, it looks like you're really scared. Oh, I bet you're feeling pretty excited right now. I wonder if you're feeling a little angry. And it's okay to guess if you're not sure. They have no problem telling you if you're wrong. And if needed, you can ask some gentle questions. We don't want you to ask, why are you behaving this way? Why are you feeling like this? But it can be more like, I wonder if you're feeling a little bit sad that this happened.
Okay, so for step 4, this is going to be communicating empathy and understanding. So this is really going to look like communicating some empathetic statements, and communicating the acceptance of the emotion. And that does not mean that you have to agree with that emotion. So, if your child's responding in a way that, they're very angry that something happened and you don't feel that they should be angry in that situation, we don't have to agree that that emotion is appropriate. It's really just the act of showing like I, understand what you're feeling right now and it's okay to be feeling that. So that they're able to see like feelings aren't a bad thing to have, but we have to, we can't respond in harmful or hurtful ways. And I think a really helpful key when kind of thinking about what a child might be experiencing in one of these, times where we're seeing a really big emotion is to put yourself in your child's shoes or to imagine a time where you felt that really strong emotion. So if they're feeling angry that their snack fell on the ground or something, we can all think of a time that maybe we spilt our coffee all over and that made us feel a very similar feeling. So just kind of relating that to something that you might have experienced in your own life to be able to kind of do that act of putting yourself in your child's shoes.
And the final step is to set limits and problem solve. So our mantra is that feelings are always okay, but behavior needs limits. So, it's okay to be angry, but you can't hit your sister. It's okay to be disappointed, but I can't let you break this. I know you're sad, but we can't buy that toy. And then doing some problem solving of, I can see that you're upset. Why don't we try taking some deep breaths? Or even asking, what could we do now? What would make this better for you? And trying to figure out the pros and cons of different regulation strategies as well with your child.
All right, so we reviewed all of our steps of emotion coaching today, and it's a pretty brief overview, but it gives us, kind of hopefully a guide to go off of when we're, in these situations or experiencing some of these big feelings with our children. We just compiled a few different resources here of where to find help within the area. So the first step we can do is, talk to pediatrician or contact Early On or Build Up Michigan for some different services. Take advantage of some local mental health clinics like what we have it here at Eastern Michigan University. And there's also Michigan Medicine Infant and Early Childhood Clinic. They're also a great resource as well. And then obviously some other community services, some community mental health, check with insurance providers, Psychology Today, or local parenting groups. We have some different resources on the website that you're able to access. And then we also have an email linked on our website too if you have any, further questions or looking for further direction. So
Thank you so much for your time today.
thanks. Bye.